Previously, Mill was competing for the title of the best pastry of the world, but he died in an accident. God then decided to reincarnate him in another world as Pastry Mill, the son of a noble with an S-rank magic. Things continue. A month passed after the bandit incident, but there was another problem. Pass met Fuel and Casserole, who told them they're broke like me. Fuel initially ignored it because Casserole always claims to be broke. Pass, on the other hand, wants to fix the situation. Casserole explains they had to shut down two villages because of the bandits, and now they need to dig out the wells and rebuild the houses again. But they also need to have provisions for all the villagers. Plus the fields need to be repaired, and there's no money for all of this. They were going to get 200 gold pieces for the bandit leader. But Mark's stupidity ruined their chances of getting a reward. Casserole thinks about borrowing money from another noble. However, they won't lend anything. All near my lands were damaged in the winter, and the bandits also damaged it. Casserole thinks about asking the court nobles in the capital for money, but their interest rates will extort them. Pass questions if they can ask his grandparents for help, but his parents cut ties with their families 15 years ago. Casserole says they didn't even introduce Pass to his grandparents, so it's impossible to ask them for money. He further explains that everyone was against him marrying Pa's mother because their lands were really poor, so they basically decided to run away. Casserole then decides to call it for a day because overthinking won't lead to an answer. Pass returns to his friends who quickly understand the situation. Mark tells him to not hide stuff from them because they could also help. Pass changes the topic and asks about Lumi's recovery. She reveals that she can already go out, but she still feels some pain. Mark questions the possibility of making their fields bigger to cultivate more, but they don't have the time, people, or even the money to do it. Lumi says that Pass could sell his sweets in the city, but he cannot afford the production costs. Mark suggests the Pass could teach magic. Pass asks why he wants to learn magic. Stupid Mark thinks that he will become rich just because he can use magic. Of course, his future wife starts shaming him because he's too stupid to learn it. And even if he does, he will probably set himself on fire. Pass tries to mediate their argument, calling it flirting, and Lumi says that magic could be the key. She tells Pass they could get an idea if he shows them his magic. Pass remembers that in his previous life he would talk to his colleagues and get ideas for new sweets, so he decides to give it a try. Pass tells them to draw something on the ground. Mark draws himself, defeating a dragon with magic, while Lumi draws some bonkers. Pass then uses his magic to copy the images into their hands. Lumi tries to rub it off, but it doesn't disappear. Pass explains it's permanent if he uses it on trees or walls, but it disappears in 3 days if he uses it on skin. Lumi then asks if he can do the opposite. Pass is confused. She says that he can copy a drawing into something and asks if he copies something else as a drawing. He still doesn't understand. She explains that it would be cool if he could put a picture of a house or someone's face on the ground. Mark tells her that doesn't make sense, but Pass realizes this is the answer he was looking for. He holds her hand and calls her a genius. He then realizes that Lumi is blushing and gets shy. He apologizes and immediately storms off to meet his father. Casserole was discussing the situation with Fuel and his wife. They were considering asking for money from her parents, but she isn't sure about it. Suddenly, Pass storms into the room with a plan. They all want to hear it. He asks if his father remembers the time when he mentioned his attempts to arrange a marriage for Josephine, Pass' sister, who is already 13 and within the typical marriage age. His father still doesn't understand where Pass going. Pass explains that his father can take Josephine around to introduce her to other nobles because he can use his teleportation magic. But some nobles cannot use magic and are forced to attend a royal ball in the capital. But that's an expensive and dangerous trip. Pass says they could sell matchmaking photos. He then uses his magic to make his mother's portrait on a plank of wood. Casserole and Fuel cannot believe it because it's so detailed. His mother looks at it and she feels like she's seeing herself in a mirror. Pass' goal is to use this magic to make a picture of nobles who are looking for a marriage partner. Casserole thinks this is a perfect opportunity. They can charge 5 or 10 gold pieces per picture, but it could become even more expensive. Some parents won't care about money if they're able to introduce their kids like this. Fuel mentions there's a risk to expose Pass magic if they do this. Pass explains they won't be able to hide it forever, and if they do this, people will think his magic is just about making pictures. Casserole decides to test this idea first with counter tests because he will meet her to talk about the bandits. Casserole and Pass arrive in the city of Rootsvale and ask for a meeting with Count Lethesh. Count Lethesh is watching from the window, curious if he wants to blame her for not dealing with the bandits. She plans to simply praise Casserole for his achievements and send him off. Pass and his father get inside, where they meet Count Brioche Lethesh. Pass remembers his father giving him a brief introduction to her. She is the eldest daughter of the previous count, but her father passed away in battle and Brioche assumed authority of the county until the rightful heir is old enough. However, the heir mysteriously died before becoming an adult. Casserole shows his respects to Brioche, and she mentions how Pass looks like a charming young man. Pass approaches her to show his respects, but he already noticed that she's observing their behavior. She invites them to join her for tea, but Pass is more focused on the cookies. She mentions that this is her land specialty and that she prepared the best possible tea. Casserole stays polite and praises how famous her tea is, mentioning that the aroma and flavor live up to its reputation. But Pass is still focused on the cookies. He grabs one and tries it, just to find it tastes horrible. Brioche doesn't understand because most kids love to receive any kind of sweet. Pass then sips on the tea, just another disappointment. Brioche praises Casserole for not only being excellent in military matters, but also for all the agricultural changes he made on his land. She mentions that she would love to learn his secrets and knowledge. That's when Casserole drops the bone. Most of the changes made to his land, it's because of Pass' advice. She thinks he's refusing to be acknowledged for his achievements. Of course, nobody would ever believe that a kid who isn't still 10 years old would be capable of overseeing the cultivation of a wasteland. Brioche tells Pass that he must be proud of having such an amazing father. Casserole and Pass have been waiting for this moment. Since she's talking to Pass, he can unleash his true beast. First he says that he's proud of his father, but he then counterattacks that his father's land was raided by several hundred bandits. It was so bad that Pass and other kids were forced to join the fight. Brioche wasn't expecting this blow from a 9-year-old kid. Almost everyone knows it was 50 bandits, but he's just telling a lie to get an advantage. He wants to throw her off while negotiating. Brioche realizes that she made a mistake by allowing a kid to talk about this subject. She's forced to stay calm and mentions that it's great to see a young boy assuming the responsibility of nobility. But Pass attacks again. He mentions that they interrogated the bandits who revealed they had come out of retest fail. She realizes the Pass is trying to negotiate damages and pretends to be ignorant, but Pass is already prepared. He mentions that they are prepared to turn a few bandits over to her so she can interrogate them as well, but he doesn't stop. He mentions that according to the law they could hand the bandits to the royal family, and if they do that it will lead to an official investigation. She tries to counter by mentioning that they defeated a huge group of bandits. Maybe the survivors escape into Casserole's land. But Pass remembers Fuel's initial report regarding the bandits. He remembers the bandits stating they had dealt severe damage to retest Vale before moving to their lands, but Brioche claims they defeated them. So Pass asks who did fight against the bandits. Brioche cannot accept defeat and makes the mistake of asking Pass if they have any proof. Casserole then shows a sword owned by one of the bandits, and that sword was carrying Lethesh family crest. Brioche quickly realizes that she was caught in her lie. Pass attacks, again mentioning her test men failed to eradicate the bandits and because of it Casserole's lands were raided. Pass explains they don't want to cause trouble over this incident, but since they were attacked, they need to be compensated for Lethesh failure. She asks if he considers 100 gold pieces appropriate, but Pass replies that it doesn't cover the damages. She reveals that he doesn't seem like a child, and UPS the compensation to 130, but Pass refuses. She cannot believe she was beaten by a kid and decides to give 150 gold pieces. Pass asks his father's opinion and they accept the deal while they sign the contract. Brioche realizes that Pass is exceptional and realizes that he might be the reason his father's land is prospering, especially because fathers are the ones who conduct negotiations, but Pass just put her to shame. She still thinks that 150 gold pieces is a small price to pay, considering she could have lost the king's trust. After everything is done, Brioche reveals she underestimated Pass due to his age. Pass apologizes for the things he said, but he needed to do it. She says he never introduced himself to her and she follows up on her request. She mentions that she noticed his reaction to the tea and cookies and asks if there was something wrong. Pass unleashes his true demon form. He mentions that the cookies and cake were overly sweet. His father realizes that letting him speak was a mistake, but Pass doesn't stop. Pass continues by saying that it will be more appealing if they add something less sweet to go with the tea. Pass tries to continue his explanation of how to do it, but Casserole bonks his head before leaving. Pass apologizes for not bringing a gift, so he pulls out a piece of cloth and uses his magic. Brioche barely believes that she saw him make a portrait of her in a second. She thanks him for the gift and Pass says goodbye. That brings the episode to an end. Things continue. Casserole then went to a coming-of-age ceremony of the Duke's Cadreset grandson. He congratulates the Duke for his grandson Squale's recent coming of age. The Duke then introduces Squale, mentioning he graduated as the top student in the military academy. The young boy nervously salutes Casserole and the Duke apologizes for his stiffness. He reveals that Squale admires Casserole and was looking forward to meeting his childhood hero. Casserole mentions it's an honor and introduces Pass to the Duke. Pass introduces himself in a relaxed and confident manner, impressing the Duke. He calmly compliments Squale, who bites his tongue due to his nerves. The Duke mentions that despite being younger, Pass looks more mature than his grandson. He also mentions that Pass is already an adult and asks if he awakened his magic. Pass mentions he indeed got magic abilities by the grace of God, impressing the Duke, who mentions Casserole's family has been blessed. Pass stays calm and humbly replies that he got lucky. The Duke gets curious and asks if Pass can demonstrate his magic. Pass accepts and asks if he can borrow a piece of cloth from the butler. He casts his magic, printing the image of a beautiful young girl. The Duke is impressed, but his grandson's heart skips a beat. Pass mentions this is a gift from himself and Margrave of Huberec, who wanted to introduce his daughter to Squale. The Duke mentions the Margrave couldn't be present and asks if it's truly his daughter. Pass introduces her as Margrave's third daughter named Petra. He explains that he visited their domain with his father's magic and met her. The Margrave is currently stuck in a conflict and Petra couldn't come to meet Squale, so they decided to introduce her this way. Squale is head over heels for her, mentioning she's cute and pretty. Pass takes this chance to invite him to come to her coming-of-age celebration in the next month. Squale instantly agrees. His grandfather gets mad because Squale is stupid. He's not thinking of the position of family and doesn't recognize this was a marriage proposal. The Duke tries to play safe and tells Squale to calm down. He then asks how he plans on getting there. Pass mentions they can use his father's magic to travel safely. Squale acts like a happy puppy, telling his grandfather that they would have problems with Casserole's help. The Duke starts regretting, but Pass sees a chance. He whispers the Margrave has been fighting for some years and is getting tired. The Duke gets interested and asks for more information. Pass mentions the Margrave wants to stop the battle by using the Duke's military, and for that he wants to marry his daughter to Squale. Despite only it being Pass's opinion, the Duke thinks it's a piece of interesting and reliable information. The Duke decides to come along to Petra's celebration while thinking that it may become a good story to tell the king. Squale later comes to Pass and they become friends. He takes this chance to ask what kind of things Petra likes. Pass only met her once and mentions she liked the sweets he baked. Squale asked if Pass was skilled at making sweets, and Pass replies that he finds happiness in making them. Pass starts going overboard, explaining the sweets he likes the most. But Squale interrupts him to ask him a favor. Pass thinks he wants him to make some sweets, but turns out Squale wants another portrait of Petra, spicier one. Pass ends up agreeing because his goal is to become the matchmaker between the two. A few weeks passed and winter is getting close. The villagers focus their time on rebuilding their homes and getting provisions of food and firewood. Casserole is satisfied with the current situation, yet Fuel strikes him with a question. He asks why Casserole gives money to his people or helps them in their work, something unusual for Lawrence. Casserole explains doing it doesn't make him look good, but his reputation would be worse if his people fell into poverty. Fuel says Casserole is kind and Pass enters the office, mentioning he heard them talk about sweetness. Fuel tells Pass to at least knock next time because of his manners. Pass explains he heard them inside, so there shouldn't be a problem. He then turns to his father and gives him the letter they received. Casserole reads the letters from the Duke and Margrave and mentions that their temporary income problem has been resolved. They will be receiving 20,000 pieces of silver because Squale and Petra's engagement has been decided. They will be announcing it during Petra's coming of age. Pass is happy that it worked because he spent several hours getting the matchmaking photo. The Margrave took 2 whole days to decide on the one that satisfied his requirements. The Margrave will also send 30 gold coins in advance, which Fuel thinks they could use to get some horses. Casserole explains the funds are meant to be used to protect Petra. Pass is initially confused, but his father explains the Margrave requested them to keep her safe during their trip and during the ceremony in the capital. Fuel mentions there are plenty of people who are against the idea of marriage between the two noble families. Casserole thinks the same, mentioning the enemy of the Margrave. Fuel thinks it's okay because they're keeping the engagement a secret, but Pass understands the church might leak the information. Casserole explains the church is officially a neutral entity, but if paid enough money they will reveal information. Pass also realizes that they can collect tons of information because they claim to be neutral. Casserole mentions he can protect Petra by himself with his teleportation spell, but it will be hard to teleport her and the guards protecting her to the capital at the same time. Fuel mentions they can recruit mercenaries in the capital, but the enemy could infiltrate. Casserole mentions they will be at a disadvantage of Balvaldia because they don't know the terrain. Fuel mentions they should refuse to escort Petra, but Casserole refuses. He mentions this is the best opportunity to get the trust of both lords, which will create a domino effect for Mortal's future development. Pass then suddenly gets the perfect idea to protect Lady Petra. He mentions the perfect places where there aren't any windows, there's a single door, and you can't leave without an excuse. The church, he explains. It's an unknown place where only those who go under the sanctification with Petra there. They can prolong the ceremony due to various circumstances. Casserole thinks it's a good idea because most people won't interfere with the church. Fuel says this is a perfect plan to earn the gold and build more houses. Pass also delivers an invoice from the traveling merchant with the supplies delivered and tries to leave, but Casserole tells him to stop because there is an unwanted creative bonkers in the case of Sugar. Pass tries to play it out, mentioning it's the best opportunity to get things they usually can't get. He wants to use this chance to get ingredients for the future. Casserole knows he only thinks about sweets and deducts the cost from Pass's allowance. The day of Petra's coming of age quickly arrived and Casserole met the Margrave to escort them. The Lord was impressed that Pass was also going to join them. Casserole mentions that Petra will feel more comfortable with someone around her age, yet in reality Pass is part of their plan. They step inside the carriage and greet Petra and her younger twin sister Licorice. Petra thanked Pass for the baked goods he gave when they met and promises to make more. He tries to talk to Licorice, but since she isn't good at communication, replies in a cold manner. Licorice tries to apologize to Petra, who tries to mediate the situation, but she thinks she's only a bonus. Pass's escorting plan is to head to a local church where they will pretend Petra is going under the sanctification ceremony. They will then teleport to the capital and then protect Petra until the appointed time. The Margrave tells Casserole there are people on the move to hurt Petra, but Casserole assures that everything is arranged. They finally arrive at the church, where Pass expects to be attacked because they will be exposed. The group decides to ambush them, but everyone steps up to protect the girls. Casserole easily defeats his opponent, but one manages to sneak into the carriage. The two sisters begin to scream, scared for their lives. But Pass steps up to protect the girls with this sword. He takes the fight outside, promising to protect the girls. The girls cannot believe their eyes as they see Pass blocking the opponent's attack. Suddenly one more tries to attack him from the side and Licorice tries to warn him. When Pass is about to get hit, Casserole manages to disarm the bandit father and son, then manage to defeat the bandits, and Casserole tells them to return and fight him after training 200 years. The bandits retreat and Pass takes the chance to correct him because people cannot live that long. The Margrave thank them for protecting his daughters, but Casserole tells them to go inside. The girls are still scared, but Pass tries to calm them down. They step inside the church and head to the basement, which Petra notices that it's a bit far. Licorice seems to be afraid of the dark and calls for her sister, but Pass gently holds her hand. He tells her she's safe because they're there, making the little girl blush. That brings the episode to an end.